Hey everybody, this is Mr. Lucas. This week we're going to have a Net 126 midterm lab assignment. It includes in your student data files a packet tracer assignment, like a starter file. It's got some stuff in there. Some stuff has been configured. A lot still needs to be configured. And that is based off of our instruction file, which is a PDF there that you don't have to turn back in, but it tells you how to walk through the lab assignment and configure everything. So this is a good assignment to review since we're a little past the halfway point in our curriculum. We have covered 6 chapters, so this is going to kind of review everything we've done thus far in the semester. So I'm going to open up the starter file and the PDF. All right, so once we get it open, I'm just going to move this over. All right, so now we can see kind of our whole network here. We've got a lot of devices. In this scenario, we've got a edge router. An edge router is usually the router that kind of is the last spot on a campus or in a business before it goes to like the outside world, your internet service provider or whoever else, another campus or something like that. Everything else is kind of on our internal network per se. Okay, so the ISP and the Google Web Server already been configured. No need to try to access either one of those devices at all. Everything's good to go there. But we are going to configure every single one of these other devices, and we're going to start with cabling. Okay, so over here in our instruction file, we've got a complete device list with interface names, IP addresses for each one, the subnet mask, and the default gateway down here. We've got our sub interfaces, so you can see we're going to be doing some inter VLAN routing. Okay, so some of the other topics: static routing, static default, both methods as well, the recursive and the directly attached method, port security, inter VLAN routing, configuring serial interfaces, all that stuff we're going to review in this particular lab. Okay, so as we go down, we start with step 1. It says cable the devices together. Be sure to use the appropriate cable choices, which is always important, the type of cable, and pay attention to the interface names in the above addressing table, and using the labels in the packet tracer file. Some labels are already there to kind of help ease where you're plugging stuff into. Note the DCE end of the serial cables as well. Those should help guide your decision making, as well as this chart here. So we've got the edge router S000 DCE plugged into the internal router S000. So I'm going to go down here and grab a serial cable. I'm going to get the one with the clock on it because that end is going to need the clock rate later. And it says serial DCE in packet tracer. So I'm going to plug that into S000 and S000 on the internal router. Okay. Now I'm going to grab a copper straight through cable to plug into the edge routers G00 into the switches G01. Okay, remember a straight through can connect a router to a switch. Now I'm going to connect all my PCs, and you see it says here too FA06 on the switch to FA0 on the PC, and that's for the CFO PC. We're going to do FA011 on the switch to FA0 on the CIO PC, the Chief Information Officer. And then lastly, we'll do FA018 on the switch to FA0 on the CEO's computer. Okay. And then lastly, we need to cable the internal router G00. Oh, sorry, we need to grab a proper crossover cable, which is the dotted line here, the straight dotted line, to connect the G00 on the internal router to the fast Ethernet port of the internal company server. It's important you grab the right type of cable there. Okay, now this lab, as you go through it, does not have any counters. Okay, so you just kind of have to go for it. All right, that's why it's really testing your knowledge here. In step 2, it says configure the general housekeeping configurations for each device. This is the stuff that we've done over and over and over again. So like here on the edge router, I'm going to zoom in for our configuration. It tells us to do a host name, console password, telnet password, encrypted password, and a banner. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here. Okay, so we're going to do a host name of edge router. Remember, it has to be all one word. You could put anything there. It really doesn't affect connectivity at all. It's just for identification purposes. Then I'm going to do line con 0, password Cisco, log in. That takes care of my console line password. My VTY is my telnet. 0 through 4 means 5 people can log in using, the 5 channels, including 0. Password Cisco, log in. A enable secret password of class. Okay, and a banner. So banner MOTD. This, you could put like, you can put anything, just as long as you know how to do it. I'm just going to put unauthorized access prohibited. Okay. Now we're going to go do that for the other devices as well. So on the company XYZ switch here, I'm going to do a host name of XYZ switch. And again, you're just doing the same thing. So line con 0, password Cisco, log in, line VTY04, password Cisco, log in, enable secret class, and banner MOTD, unauthorized access prohibited. Okay, so it's just doing those same housekeeping stuff, to name the device, set up some password security, and put a little message when you log in. Okay, now we're going to go over to our internal router, which is our last device to do these housekeeping commands on. And I'm going to do a host name of internal router. Okay. Line console 0, password Cisco, log in, line VTY04, password Cisco, log in, enable secret class, and banner MOTD, unauthorized access only. Oh, sorry, access prohibited. Yeah, that'd be funny. Only access this if you're not supposed to. No. All right, so we've got all that set up for each one. That covers step 1. Again, you don't have a counter here to tell you if you did it right. Just base it off of, this video as well as what you know. So next it says configure the edge routers S000 and S001 interfaces with the correct addressing information. Be sure they are both turned on as well. Set clock rates where necessary to basically 2 million bits, which is 2 megabits per second. Also set a description for each interface for ease of troubleshooting later. So we're going to tackle these 2 serial interfaces on the company edge router. Okay. Now you'll want to consult your addressing table for these IP addresses. So I'm going to go into interface S000, and I'm going to set a description connection to internal router. Okay, that just lets me know when I do a show run which one was which. Okay, IP add, it is 10.10.1.1 255.255.255.252. Okay, and then I'm going to set a clock rate because this is the DCE end of the cable. Okay, and I'm going to type in no shut. Okay, now obviously the cable does not turn green or the port light because I have not configured the other end for the internal router. Okay, now I'm going to go into S001, and this one's going to be description connection to ISP. Okay, because it's connected to the ISP up there. The IP address from your table, 10.10.2.1. Subnet mask of 255.255.255.252. And I'm going to set a clock rate to the same 2 million, which is 2 megabits per second. And I'm going to do no shut. Now that one in our topology here should turn green because ISP is already configured appropriately. Okay. So that takes care of the two interfaces on the serial interfaces on the edge router. Okay. Next it says configure the internal routers S000 and G00 interfaces. Be sure they are both turned on as well. Also set a description for ease of troubleshooting later. Okay, so I'm going to go to the internal router here, and I'm going to do INT. I'm going to do the serial interface first, which is 000. I'm going to do description connection to edge router. Okay, because that's the one that's connected there. IP address is 10.10.1.2. Subnet mask 255.255.255.252. And I don't need a clock rate here because this is the DT as in truck, DTE end of the connection. No shut, and you see it turns to green in your diagram. Okay. Now I'm going to do the G00 interface, and that is the, we'll put a description connection to internal server because that's the one that's going to the server there. Okay. IP add 192.168.40.254 255.255.255.0 and no shut. Don't need a clock right there because it's not a serial interface. That is just the interface that it shares right here, okay, with the internal company server. Okay. Now, it says configure IP addresses of all your end devices. That's the internal company server, the PCs, all three of them. All right, so I'm going to start over here with the internal company server. 192.168.40.1. My subnet mask, it suggests actually is right, but always check that. It should be 255.255.255.0, and my subnet mask is 192.168. Or sorry, the default gateway is 192.168.40.254. Okay, that's the IP address of the G00 on the internal router. Okay, now the CFO computer from my addressing table is 192.168.10.1. It suggests the right subnet mask again, and 10.254 is going to be the subnet mask. That's going to be my sub interface for my my inner VLAN routing in a minute for VLAN 10. Okay. Then CIO computer. So subnet mask of 192.168.20.1, IP address of 192.168.20.1, subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, default gateway of 192.168.20.254. And then lastly, the CEO computer, 192.168.30.1, 192.168.30.254. It's the default gateway, and subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. All right, so it takes care of all of our end devices. Now we're going to configure the XYZ switch with correct VLAN information. So I've got up there at the top two little notes up there, and we need, sorry about that, we need VLANs created for 10. So I'm going to do VLAN 10, name, finance. Okay, and then you don't have to type X here, just make sure you actually go to a different VLAN. So VLAN 20, name, technology. Okay, VLAN 30, name, admin. VLAN 99, name, management, and native. No spaces. Okay. So I basically created and named each VLAN on the switch. Okay. Next, it says the switch needs to be configured with correct VLAN port assignments. Be sure each port is set to the correct mode, access mode or trunk, and be sure they carry the appropriate VLANs. The trunk link should be set to carry all VLANs, including having VLAN 99 set as the native. Okay, so here I'm going to configure each port. So we've got interface FA06 that travels to the CFO PC up there. So I'm going to do switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 10. Okay, so it's only going to carry that one VLAN because it's going to the end device. Now I'm going to go to interface FA011, switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 20, because that goes to the CIO PC. Interface FA018, switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 30. Okay, so I've got each one of those configured. Now the G01 port right here, okay, needs to be in trunking mode because it needs to carry all VLANs. Okay, switch port mode trunk, and it's going to the router. Switch port trunk allowed VLAN, and you want to list each one. So 10, 20, 30, 99, even the 99, and switch port trunk native VLAN 99. Okay, so that configures each port appropriately. Also under G01, we need to do no shut. Sorry about that. We need to turn it on. Okay, but it's not going to be on quite yet because of the other end on the router. Okay. Next says configure inter VLAN routing on the edge router. Configure each sub interface correctly with the correct IP addressing information and the correct encapsulation. The physical port should be configured as well. Okay, so that's right here, this G00 on the edge router. So we're going to do interface G00, and we're just going to do no shut. Remember, on the actual physical port, all you do is turn it on. You need no IP addressing information, but that's because if you look in our addressing table, we actually have sub interfaces set up, okay, to carry each VLAN. So interface G0/0, so it should start with the physical port name and then dot whatever one you set up. So we're going to do .10 for the VLAN 10 traffic, okay, and we do encapsulation dot 1Q, that number 10 again because that's VLAN 10 traffic, and then the IP addressing information out of our chart. Okay, it automatically turned on when we did the G00 dot whichever interface we're doing. Okay, so we do dot 20 next, and we're going to do, and you must do the encapsulation first. If you try not to, it will give you an error. So encap.1q20, IP add 192.168.20.254. Okay, interface G0/0.30, encap.1q30, IP add. Okay, and then lastly, interface G0/0.99, encap.1q99, IP add 192.168.99.254. Okay, and I got all of that just from my addressing table up here at the top. Okay. All right, so we are good to go there. Now it says, because we have our network laid out like we do, we haven't went over dynamic routing yet. We're going to go over static. So it says configure static and dynamic routing on the edge router. A static route should be configured to reach the 192.168.40.0 network, which is the internal router's LAN, because it's more than one hop away. It's not directly plugged into my edge router. So I need one using the recursive method. Remember, recursive we set to next hop IP. So I'm going to be trying to go from this edge router right here to this LAN between the other side of the internal router. Okay, so on the edge router, I'm going to do IP route 192.168.40.0 was my destination network. 255.255.255.0 is my destination subnet mask. And the next hop IP address means when it leaves the edge router, what IP address do I need to send it to? And that would be the serial 000 IP address on the internal router. So it's going to be 10.10.1.2. Just the IP address is all I need there. And hit enter. That will allow me connectivity to that company server, the internal company server. Now, I got to get to the Google web server. So because I control everything behind the edge router, pretty much anything that I just am not going to know about other than that 40.01, anything else, I'm just going to set one to send to my internet service provider. So hopefully they know how to route it to the right place. So I'm going to do IP route. So it can get to the 192.168.50.0, but the reason I don't hone in on that one specifically is because maybe there's a multitude of devices I don't know about on the other side of the ISP router in a real world situation. But this time I'm going to use directly attached method. So anytime I want to send it to that network, whether it be the 192.168.50.0 network or some other network, I'm going to send it out of 001 on the edge router. And remember, the all zeros means anything that that router doesn't currently know about. Okay. So those are the two static routes. So static route, remember static default, when you hear default, you should think all zeros. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the internal router, and it tells me to configure a default static route using the directly attached method. Okay, so I'm going to do IP route, all zeros again, because it says default, and I'm going to send it out of, there's only one way in and one way out of the internal router, as you can see here, send it out of S000. So hopefully the edge router will know how to get there. Okay. Lastly, we're going to enable some port security. Okay, this is back from chapter 2, I believe. So we're going to enable port security on FA06, FA011, FA018, the ports that are plugged in from the switch to the PCs. They should only be able to learn about one MAC address, so I need to set a max of 1, and the port should be shut down if switches recognize another PC or MAC address tries to access that port. Okay, so pretty much I'm going to go here to the company XYZ Switch, and I'm going to do interface FA06, okay, switch port security, okay, switch port security, MAC address. I never can remember if it's the, there we go, MAC address sticky. Okay, that's going to learn dynamically whichever one crosses its port first. Then we're going to do switch port security max 1, switch port security violation shutdown. So if any other MAC address tries to go across it, it'll shut the port down. And I'm basically going to repeat that for FA011. So I'm going to hit up a couple times and grab my commands. It's the exact same ones, just on a different port. Okay. And also for 18. Okay. So it's going to learn and turn on switch port security for each one of those. Okay. And that is it. Now I want to make sure that all my devices can ping each other. So let me zoom out here. Okay. I want to be sure that I have end-to-end connectivity. So I want to be sure that my CFO computer can contact my other computers. Okay. And you want to, that says failed at first, but if I refire that, you see it says successful, right? So I want to make sure that I can contact each PC back and forth, right? They all say successful. Now let's try our PC to our internal company server. It says failed at first, we refire it, it says successful. So I want to be sure each PC can contact that. Okay, so it means it's going across the network and getting back appropriately. So that's awesome. Now let's try lastly our PCs to our Google web server. Refire it, we get successful, right? So now we want to make sure each one. So boom, we're good. So we have end-to-end connectivity. We have configured inter VLAN routing, static default routing, port security, IP addresses, serial interface, cabling. We've covered a gamut of stuff, all through from even topics in our first class in Net 125, but this reviews all of our topics from chapters 1 through 6. So definitely keep this in mind. Turn in just your packet tracer file. I'll be able to see them all. Your last step there in step 13 basically says to save your running configurations, and you would just do a copy run start on each device, the switch and the edge router and the internal router. And it asks you what commands you use to accomplish the task of making sure you've got end-to-end connectivity. In Packet Tracer, we're nice enough to add this little envelope symbol and you can point and click, but in a real-world situation, you want to use the ping command and the IP address of your destination. Hopefully that helps, and make sure you let me know if you have any questions.